Welcome to Something to Talk About from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. We're happy to have you here. Today is Treaty Day, which is the day that we note that the Point Elliott Treaty was signed in 1855, intended to give tribal people certain rights, notably the right to fish, hunt, and gather. Not all, in fact, hardly any of the treaty was respected. We'll talk more about that in a minute. I want to begin by saying that we are sponsored by Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island, which provides services to seniors who are looking for assisted living, independent living, or vibrant memory care. They are located on Rolling Bay, and if you would like to take a tour or learn about their respite or day stay programs, jot down this information, 206-594-1010, or email Ashley C. at fieldstonecommunities.com. Go to their website, fieldstonecommunities.com, or just drop by for a tour. They're right around the corner from Bay Hay and Feed. And we are meeting on the ancestral homeland of the Suquamish people. The Suquamish have lived on these waters, as we will be discussing in detail today, since time immemorial. We honor them and we are learning from their stewardship. And to kick us off here, Anne Lovejoy is joining us, and tell us a little bit more about what we are observing today, please.
Sure. Thank you, Reed. One of the things that I find interesting is for the last few years, you've probably all heard various versions of the Suquamish Land Acknowledgement that Reed just read, because we and lots of other organizations have been offering them at the start of a lot of programs. But for all the repetitions, many of us aren't really that clear about what the Point Elliott Treaty is all about and what it does and doesn't do. And I've had several people say, why on earth would they celebrate something that was broken so many times? And I thought that was a great question. I didn't, until I moved to the Seattle area in the mid 1970s, I'd never even heard much about tribal treaty issues beyond a general understanding that most of them had never actually been fulfilled. But when I got here, the Bolt decision of 1974 that had allowed tribal fishermen to harvest half the salmon in the Salish Sea was rocking a lot of boats, from commercial and hobby fishermen to conservationists and social conservatives and a lot of other people. And that bitter battle over fishing rights made it very clear that the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855, which affected most or maybe all of the Salish coastal tribes that were known at the time, had some pretty amazing specific breaches. So, like, one of the first things I remember asking people as kind of a newcomer to Seattle is like, wait a minute, if the Duwamish tribe used to own all this, like most of King County, right? Like almost all the Seattle metro area was Duwamish, which was considered kind of a cousin tribe to the Suquamish. If they owned it, how come they're excluded? They're not officially recognized by Seattle, let alone the government, like the national government, even though Chief Seattle, who signed the treaty, was chief of both the Duwamish and the Suquamish people. That just blew my mind. And nobody could really give me a good answer except, well, it doesn't really matter anymore. Or, they didn't do this or they didn't do that, or there's not enough people or they didn't document or something. But it was all pretty clearly like nobody had a lot of heart to deal with it. And the tribes got pretty frustrated trying to go get those promises fulfilled time and time again. That I remember back in one of the Bush administrations, an administrator actually signed an agreement to fulfill the treaty, but he signed it 3 days after he officially resigned from his position. So they threw it out. That was in 2002, I think. I remember sort of reading that and being like, oh, that is really a sort of sly way to say, sure, I'll help you, but not, right? Anyway, in that treaty, the Duwamish people gave up over 54,000 acres of land, including much of what is now King County, in exchange for, like Reed said, the hunting and fishing rights and the creation of a reservation near where what's now Renton. And then the Suquamish tribal reservation was a lot bigger than it was in the Port Madison area where it is now, but it was far larger than it is at this point. But besides the hunting and fishing rights, there's some other really important things that all the signatory tribes were promised, which was support and funding for housing education, and healthcare. And as we know, the education part, Mission Indian schools, was a complete disaster and really contributed a lot to the destruction of tribal life and culture, which is turns out was the intention. Um, so why would you celebrate this? And so I've been looking through some of the things various tribal elders have written, and Alumni elder Terry Thayer wrote that even though it's unfulfilled, the treaty affirms two really important concepts. Sovereignty is the first one. And she said, the United States did and still identifies tribal nations as sovereign. The precedent was set in these written agreements as treaties, and it's a declaration that we are a people with our own government and ability to engage directly government to government. The very idea of being a sovereign nation has been and continues to be challenged directly and indirectly, and we have heard a fair bit about that around here too. The ongoing invisibility, lack of acknowledgement, and simplistic recognition of Native people, land, and culture is here and now. So that has not changed, right? The other word she pulls out is treaty. This has always been seen as a promise, a commitment that each party made in working agreement with each other. Treaty Day is not about celebrating an agreement made with white people. I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense now. It is a recognition of the effort made on behalf of tribal people to work together. It is a contract that shows an effort at unity. It is a document that everyone in this area has benefited from in one way or another, and it is a recognition of the agreement that must still to this day be honored. So, and she goes on to say that day must be honored by all. It is the foundation of who we are and how we exist as Washingtonians. Treaty Day is an example of how to create unity, how to revitalize the commitment to each other and all the Salish communities. We must continue to acknowledge, respect, and include Native voices. What are you doing to honor this agreement? She's asking her readers. How are you educating yourself? It is our responsibility to do our research and put our knowledge into action. So I thought, wow, okay, that's pretty amazing. And then Reed found this great little film clip, which about current treaty issues that Leonard Forsman, chairman of the Suquamish tribe, has produced recently. So let's look at that together and then think maybe consider how we might put our own increasing knowledge into action as we are challenged to do.
I am chairman of the Suquamish tribe and also president of affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians. Our way of life is at stake. Of course, we've been relying on Puget Sound and Salish Sea for our subsistence and our culture and spirituality and our way of life for thousands of years. So not only did it feed our bodies, but it feeds our spirit and also allowed us to be economically independent and able to trade with our neighbors and also provide the resources we needed to support our ceremonial structure, our social structure, our residents in our winter houses. Chief Seattle signed the Treaty of Point Elliott on behalf of the Suquamish tribe in 1855. And in that treaty, we gave up title to our lands that we've occupied for thousands of years. In exchange for that, we agreed to move to this reservation, the Port Madison Indian Reservation, which was established by treaty, and we also reserved certain rights for hunting, fishing, gathering, and also other guarantees such as education and health care. Although the treaty rights existed once the treaty was signed and ratified by Congress, they were never honored. And so in the 1960s, tribal leaders realized that the salmon was being mismanaged by the state, and they were also being denied access to harvest in the traditional way. And in the treaty, it says the tribes agreed to move to the reservations, but were allowed to fish in their usual and accustomed fishing areas. And those are the exact words, usual and accustomed, or UNA. So the tribes were saying, well, we should be able to fish where we've always fished. And it wasn't only on the reservation. We traveled as far north as the Fraser River to harvest salmon. So it was important for the tribes to do that. Well, the state said, no, you have to stay on the reservation. You can fish on the reservation, They're nowhere beyond that. So the tribes sued the state after many demonstrations and fish-ins and civil rights struggles that were engaged in to demonstrate that we had this right. Many people know the late Billy Frank Jr., who was jailed 43 times for fishing on the river that his family had been on for thousands of years. So this all culminated in a legal case called United States versus Washington, or the Bolt decision. So when that case went to court, Judge Bolt realized that there was a contract between the tribes and the United States. The state of Washington was violating that. He ruled that the tribes are entitled to 50% of the harvestable salmon available in Puget Sound, and said, well, the tribes need to be at the table too, and declared them as co-managers with the state. So the tribes have a seat at the table with the state, federal government, other states, with Canada, in determining these seasons and how salmon are harvested. So those people are new to this area, to our usual custom fishing area around central Puget Sound and the Salish Sea. Just like to say welcome, and hope that you'll consider our traditions and values and the way you adapt to living here, and just try to do as little harm as we can to our environment by having responsible growth management in our area, and addressing issues around vessel traffic into Puget Sound, and protecting our orcas, protecting our salmon runs, and getting our communities to talk about these issues regarding protecting rivers and from logging and development that invades the buffers that are needed to protect those salmon runs.
Thanks, Reed. I thought that was a really interesting, very concise presentation. Honestly, one of the things that surprised me the most, and it shouldn't have, was that he talked about how the tribe sees protecting orcas as is just as important as protecting salmon, whereas a lot of fishermen see orcas as being fish predators who should be, and people are still shooting them, right? And I think that's that vision, the tribal vision of the interconnectedness of all the natural systems underlies so much of their viewpoint about how they have managed their lands and all these resources for thousands of years, and how we have stepped in and undone so much of that goodness so quickly. So I love that the ideas that he just offered a few of, like, how can we put that knowledge into action? And I think it's a good question to say, how can Bainbridge Islanders be more collaborative with the Suquamish tribe? Will we, for instance, do we all respect tribal rights to hunt and fish and gather on their usual and accustomed places, even if that turns out to be our own backyards or the beachfront across the street? I have heard tribal people talk about being threatened with police action or guns when they are harvesting in their usual and accustomed places. I'm wondering if anyone else has heard stories like that or seen anything like that.
Well, certainly one of the stories that came up during the Port Madison Dialogues, which is a video series that we have watched here a couple times and is available, just search it on the internet and the videos will show up, tell stories about, even in Suquamish, people thinking of their own beachfront right there at the traditional reservation, being people walking there to do traditional fishing, or even just walking through, being violating white people's property rights. When it makes it clear that actually there's a treaty that the white predecessors signed with the tribal folks that says, no, this is shared.
Yeah, I think the shared part has been missing for a really long time. And that is something that we're all just slowly kind of, or many of us are slowly kind of coming into awareness that that shared part means we do have responsibilities. And one thing that we can all do is ask our legislators to support tribal rights and tribal right issues, especially since we are so blessed to have quite responsive legislators in our district. So, and on the state and national level as well. But that never hurts to kind of write and support. Sheila.
No, I was just wondering, when you're talking about the shared, does that mean that white people walking on the reservation, which was set aside for the people, does that mean the white people are or that the Native Americans have dominance on that area and can shoot or can shoot people away, shove people away, or what?
That's a great question. And in fact, the tribe has been almost incredibly, unfailingly generous and hospitable about people. There was an instance, a little time when they first made their tot pot park, the toddler park, and had it closed off for the use of the school kids, that some of the neighbors were complaining that they should be able to use it too. And it was their land. Or you shouldn't, take this natural resource away from us because we want to be able to use it too. That created some interesting conversations for a while there. Over time, I think people came to a more gracious understanding that land that had been taken away from the tribe and sold by the government or their agents to white vacationers was being bought back by the tribe. And the tribe wanted to use that land for their children, for the education place, and for housing. I don't know if you remember that whole issue when the tribe was creating some really nice housing for the elders that happened to be down near the water, and some of the neighbors were protesting that it spoiled their view, for instance. So that's in Suquamish, so they have not been, the tribal members have not been actively hostile to white people walking on their beaches and things like that. But they have tried to make it clear that some of what they are recapturing is for the tribe. I feel like that's kind of a pretty significant difference, right? Another piece, and I know, Sheila, you've done some of this, and I know some other people. Fern, you went and marched in the Suquamish Pride event, right? You and Mike McLeod, and didn't you find yourself being welcomed very, very warmly?
Extremely, yeah. It was an amazing day, it really was. I'm all signed up and have an ID card and everything to be a volunteer. But unfortunately, the first day I was supposed to do it, which was the canoe journey day, as the day I first got sick. So I haven't done any of it yet, but I'm hoping to get back to that.
So how did you sign up? Do you want to tell people how to do that?
Goodness, do I remember how I signed up? Well, I had talked with Kimi, and she had told me about it. And so I knew it was something I wanted to look into. And I think I must have gone online or something and signed up. And then there's it's a very well-run volunteer program. There's all kinds of things you have to do for it. But so one of these days I'm going to get to actually volunteer.
There is, you can go online, and there's a lot of opportunities. Sign up to volunteer, here are the shifts, and there's a lot of things you can do. You can help host, like Sheila, I think you have done that, haven't you? Haven't you helped with the some of the canoe journey hosting?
Yeah, I did not this last one, but the one before. I wasn't able to do it this time, unfortunately, because that first time was fantastic. I ended up being a Barbara Okota person, I was doing the trash
Ah,
and separating stuff out. But I was there for the entire time and got to see the canoes come in and being welcomed in by Leonard and his daughters. It was absolutely fantastic. And then we each had our jobs to do. That's what I got assigned to do, which is just fine. It was just great. So yeah, oh yeah, Fern, by all means, next time around, be sure to get it yourself in there, because it's really lovely. And the people that I worked with were wonderful. I worked with a lot of elder women, which made it really interesting. Really, really good time.
I was also signed up to work the Chief Seattle Days, which was not too long after the canoe weekend, but I was in the hospital then, so I could cancel that one also. Did you do the Chief Seattle Days?
I did not. No, the only one I did was and that was what, 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
right before COVID.
Yeah, before COVID. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a lot of opportunities as the canoe journey times draw near and Chief Seattle Days draw near. There are many opportunities, like every week for several months, to go and do handcrafts with the tribe. Whether you have any experience or not, or particularly crafty or not, you're really welcome. And they hold them at the tribal center, and it's making little gifts because they give out hundreds and hundreds of little gifts to all the people who participate in the canoe journeys, for one thing. And so that's part of their hospitality, but anybody is very welcome to show up and do it, which is a fun thing to do with a friend or a family or grandkids or whatever. And I just think, again, it's an example of really beautiful hospitality of like, we are all welcomed by our neighbors, our closest neighbors, the Suquamish tribe, to participate in the beautiful part of their celebrating their tribal culture, not just not just protesting with signs, though we can do that too. Lena.
Sorry, my computer's a little slow today. So I used, for some of these who don't know, I used to work for the tribe several years ago, and our department was in charge of coordinating the volunteers specifically to feed a lot of the canoe families that were coming in and some of the public. So yeah, when you're thank you for sharing that little piece, and about the community being invited to come and partake in the creative piece about making gifts. Those gifts are called giveaways. And for those of you who've never done that or don't understand that piece of it, when a tribe is hosting other tribes and community members for events like this, they give them little giveaways, little gestures, and usually they're little creations of necklaces or maybe a bracelet, something simple, or a belt of some sort. And the reason I want to bring that up is because you might not think it means a lot, but there's a lot of symbolism and meaning behind that when they're handing it over to the tribes that are pulling up on shore and the families that are driving many, many miles to become a part of this powwow or this journey event. There's a lot of prayer going over these items that you're making. So a part of you is going on that journey when these families get in the canoe and start paddling to the next destination. So it might seem like I only put in an hour, I made 1 or 2 necklaces, and that's all I can do. Well, those 2 necklaces went on a journey, and those families are going to keep those for a long time. So I just want you to know that there's a lot of appreciation to that kind of participation.
Lena, do they do that handicraft work all year long, or?
Not open to the public to come all year long. They'll start promoting when they open it up to the public to come and participate in these giveaway sessions, if you will, come to the table, join others, blah, blah. They'll start promoting that. It's not necessarily a year-long thing. But when Suquamish hosts, because it's a big deal, when you're expecting thousands and thousands of people coming in, those things are usually promoted way well in advance. The planning does usually start, a minimum of a year in advance for many things.
So how do I get my name on that one?
You know how you get them, Sheila, is you sign up for Nixle for the Suquamish zip code. Just
I
like
don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, Reed, can you pull up a thing about Nixle? Nixle is a system of it can be
I've
used
heard of
for
it.
emergency and disaster things. It's like Nixle, the city will use it to say the ferries are down or there's a street.
Yeah.
It's like a text system. You'll get a text if you sign up. You'll get a text that they'll
Right.
send out. The tribe sends that out for many different things, but it'll let you know, hey, we're opening up signups for ABC event.
So if you put in 98110, it will come to you'll get a text every time the city of Bainbridge Island puts out a Nixle alert of some kind. And if you put in the zip code for Suquamish, which I forget what it is, but maybe Reed can find it for us, then you'll start getting the tribal notifications about all kinds of things like I get them to hear, oh, this weekend there's going to be art shows or there's going to be, tribal craftspeople having a special sale for holiday gifts or, Valentine gifts are going to be available at the house of, what do they call it?
Tribal Center.
Yeah, House
The
of
House of Awakened Culture or Tribal
Awakened
Administration
Culture.
Center.
Yeah, I'm too sleepy to remember awakened. That word just escaped me. But
That's
yeah.
the official name. Yes.
But yeah, so getting the Nixle alerts, it's not only about schools are closed because of snow. It's like things like you're welcome to come this Thursday and make craft items for the canoe journey, and they'll tell you where and when, and there's contact information. So that's how I stay informed about things that are going on with the tribe that I might want to help out with.
Facebook.
What you want to
too.
do,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, what you want to do is text the zip code to 888-777,
Mhm.
and the zip code is 98392.
So we put that in as well as ours, 98110.
Yeah, you can sign up
You
for
can
as many
as you want.
as you want.
Facebook, they're pretty active too on Facebook. I'm not sure if many people are in Facebook, but they do a lot of their promotional stuff on Facebook, such as maybe the flyer goes out for community event or whatever the thing may be.
And that would be under Suquamish Tribe
Yeah.
on Facebook.
Sometimes they're kind of last minute, like it will say, tonight there's a wonderful show of, actually they did a Treaty Day program last week, but with 6 hours notice, it's a little harder sometimes for me to get myself together to do it. But I think it's really great. And it's a way to sort of be aware of all the cool stuff that the tribe is doing for itself and each other. And we get to partake too. That's another example of that hospitable generosity.
I know that they do some advertising or promoting, I should say, through the UCC church up in Suquamish as well. They work really closely with that church.
Yeah. One of the UCC neighbors was going to try to join us, but she said her internet is down. And I have to say that in Suquamish, one of the issues is internet connectivity can be really challenging. So I found like texting to Suquamish friends is a much better way to get through than trying to do email. Just because I know from my own neighborhood where internet can be sketchy, the texting seems to work better than the email sometimes. But yeah, so those are some really great ways you can reach out. Another thing that that some of the volunteer workers can do is beach cleanups, because of course, being fishermen, the tribe has a really strong program for keeping the Salish Sea waters clean and cleaning up spills and pollution and stuff like that. And there are periodic beach cleanups that we are all welcome to participate in, which is a great way to learn a lot from the docents about, how to keep beaches pristine, the kinds of things that are most harmful. They also have on their website some really good resources for that kind of thing, like, making sure that we are not adding to the burden on the water by doing certain kinds of things. As they say, we all live downstream, right? So making sure that we're not making things worse by, washing your car and dumping everything into the sewer system, which goes right straight out to the sound. And maybe it's got gas and oil and junk in it too, or not using pesticides on our lawn, which is going to get washed into Puget Sound and give us the fish with 5 eyes, that kind of stuff.
Fish with $5.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think too, talking about our legislators, you don't have to wait for an issue to remind them that, the tribal neighbors are important to us. Also, I really like to I write to our council members on the island fairly often and remind them that cultivating that relationship is really important because we want to be good neighbors, civic neighbors as well. Barbara, oh, did you want to say something?
I didn't.
So last year, the tribe put on a dinner and, maybe an hour and a half presentation about treaty rights, specifically with a focus on ICWA, Indian Child Welfare Act.
Mhm.
And that was fascinating and so informative. And the other takeaway from that is how gracious they were. They fed us and then they ran out of food and they had to order pizza. But they let all the elders get in line first. It was such a wonderful way to be treated. And being aware of being an interloper there, I mean, I was just really bowled over by their graciousness. And it's a wonderful thing to attend if you get a chance. I think they do these big things, once a year or something?
At least once or twice a year, yeah.
Yeah.
Rita, did you want to say something?
Yeah, yes, I had understood a couple years ago, I think it was at least a couple years ago, when I was listening to the our city council meetings, there apparently is a memo of understanding between our city council and the tribe. And it had been a long time since they had gotten together, and I think it was set up so that they could meet like quarterly or something. And so it'd be interesting to see who's on that committee or whatever, and see when the last time is they had met, and just how our council is kind of interacting with our closest neighbor. So
Well, Joe Dietz was just elected the mayor again, so you can direct some of those
I will.
comments to Joe, and I think he's still doing his Saturday get-togethers as well at Cups.
Mhm.
Or maybe it's once or twice a month. He'll be down there and you can go down and talk to him about what concerns. But I think that's something all of us can do, is make sure that our council people, our city manager, really understand that we have strong feelings about wanting to be supportive and make this a real genuine relationship. We have a sister island in like Guatemala, but we should have a sister island right across the bridge.
Nicaragua, I think. Ometepe.
Nicaragua, yeah. Ometepe. One thing that, and I think we will plan to, and if Barbara Lawrence is going to give us another of her wonderful historic conversations in March, and one of the things she wanted to talk about is why tribal holidays and celebrations are not necessarily the same ones that we celebrate as a nation. And it's pretty obvious that, like, I was saying earlier, some of the tribes had written things about saying Treaty Day is like their version of Independence Day. And I thought, what would that feel like if Independence Day meant to you the day that other people came and took over your country and chased your people across the country and took away every right they possibly could? How would that feel to have that be Independence Day? Is not probably the greatest, right? So it's not too surprising that the tribal choices of days to celebrate are pretty different. But she's going to talk about some of the things that tribes do celebrate around here and why, which I'm looking forward to very much. And one of the things she said was she really likes to talk to an audience. So I hope that when she comes, we're going to do a hybrid. And I hope that as many of you as can will come and be there with her, because I think that really helps some speakers, especially storyteller like Barbara, to be able to get the response from the audience and have that feedback is really heartening in a way that Zoom maybe isn't quite so much, right?
I remember when
that-
I remember when Barbara worked with us when I was teacher docenting up at the historical museum, and every summer we had a camp for kids in the neighborhood, 8 to 10 kids each time, and Barbara came and did the first couple of days with us, all the way to taking us down to the waterfront, also having Indian bread, which was great fun, and also taking us up to the museum up in Suquamish, and then going down the old man's house, the old man's house, and telling us all about it. And the kids were just wrapped with she's such a great teacher anyway. She's just got it. And I remember her telling the kids a couple of the games that they would play as kids, for security reasons. And she then had our kids do it, and to do the couple of the two games, which I will never forget, which were wonderful. She was so helpful when she came to work with us as a member on the faculty, if you will, of the summer camp, and she was with us every time and telling us, yeah, that's a good idea. No, that's not probably a good idea. She was just really, she's so quietly, genuinely graceful about the way she talks about, no, that's not a good idea. And you thought, okay. Guess maybe I understand that one.
We were also fortunate enough right before COVID to have Kate Avocano, the artist, come and do a little program at the Senior Center on weaving, on traditional native weaving crafts. And she also walked us down to Waterfront Park, down to the path that goes right along the water, and showed us the shell midden. There's a couple places where there are thousands of years worth of shell scraps piled up there. And she showed, if we look at it, you can see kind of a burn line where there was maybe a little forest fire in that area. And there's areas where all of a sudden the pile grows up and it gets to be about head height, you can see little fragments of pottery in there that weren't there before, like blue and white. So you can sort of measure the eras of it. And Barbara Lawrence has said that Bainbridge Island is where the Suquamish tribe kept their white dogs, their special woolly dogs that they used for weaving. And this was where they wanted to keep them isolated from the camp dogs because they wanted them to breed true, to have those woolly coats. So the dogs were kept over here on the island, and the women would come and feed them, and they fed them salmon and eggs and rich food because they wanted them to have really beautiful, lustrous, long coats. And
Wow.
it's kind of, I think that's just such a fun thing, like Bainbridge Island, home of the white dogs, right? There's obviously a great deal of history about this place we live that doesn't start when white people got here. And that piece, that hidden history or forgotten history, is something that we can really accept with gratitude and hopefully some grace from people like Barbara.
Mm-mm.
What were you saying, Sheila?
I was just going to say that the wall, if you will, along the waterfront, what you were talking about, Anne, was really a protected one too for the people who were on the island, for people coming in on the water. And so it was like a fort kind of wall to protect it. So it was a protected wall, as well as a place where they put, it wasn't garbage. That was just, which it looks like, but it isn't. It's definitely not.
Yeah, the shell mounds or middens
Middens, yeah.
were always sort of a marker of where the fishing camps were. And there's a little further down toward the not Grace, the little church down Wyatt Way, the stone one. What's it called? The Episcopal one. There's
Barnabas.
Yeah, St. Barnabas. So
Yeah.
there's a midden down in that neighborhood too. And there's one of the development streets is actually called Midden Lane, because there's a midden at the end of that lane. It's kind of fun. So if you look around the island, you can see signs of people who were here before us, right?
Oh yeah.
Anne, can you spell that word, mitten?
Midden.
I never heard that
A shell midden. Yeah, it's
Yeah, and it just goes by bidden. It's all really you need is if you look it up. There you go.
yeah, they were huge back in the day, and they're still pretty good size, many of them. And there's something archaeologists love digging around in those middens because often there's different kinds of
Said it was
like
hot.
pottery and stuff like that in there too.
And Fern is real easy. Just go down the waterfront, take a left, and walk along the path there. And look to your left, and you'll see them. You see all the stuff hacking around. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Someday.
Yeah, when you're more walking. Someday we have to all look ahead for those good some days, right? Anybody else got a thought they want to share? Or I'm looking forward to a couple of programs by Barbara Lawrence. Actually, she's going to do one for us on the traditional holidays, but she's going to do another one on the story of cedar and the history of weaving and the way cedar is the tree of life, which I'm really looking forward to that because I love that stuff. She has some ethnobotany skills as well as storytelling skills, and she can really put it all together. Anyway, thanks very much, everybody, for showing up, and we will be happy to see you next time.
Thank you for recognizing Treaty Day and helping us understand more about it.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much for doing
Yeah,
this.
don't forget to get in touch with those legislators because they can do something about it.